Raw consciousness does not require a savior, but rather, raw consciousness requires only knowledge of oneself and the power to access it. Remember this, as we unlock an even greater gnosis from beyond the veil.
From the Pacific Northwest, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm Chris Gio. I will be your conductor this evening as we take you even further beyond the veil. I'm joined, of course, by my lovely wife and your conductress, Mrs. Gio.
Good evening, everyone.
Ra Castaldo should be joining us in the second and third hour, but Ra is very, very elusive. So he may or may not be joining us, and we are going to upload this to YouTube a little bit later, so let me just say this real quick. I know I've been harping on about this, but the YouTube audience is not aware. I figured this is a good time to make them aware. But our live streaming capabilities have been stopped temporarily on YouTube because of a 2013 video that we put out where I was auditioning for the role of a crisis actor to prove that crisis actors existed. So I was auditioning on the telephone, and YouTube considered that bullying and harassment because I recorded my own audition and speaking to the director of the crisis actor facility. So yeah, I do apologize. We are going to set up. So on the YouTube description, you should see a Beyond the Veil group for Facebook that we will be setting up after the show, and we'll be doing some live streams on Facebook and maybe starting a new YouTube channel too. It might be time to do that. I know that our channel is suppressed and blocked by the AI. It has been since the very beginning. We've worked so hard to build an audience there, and it's like swimming uphill. So maybe a fresh start is exactly what's needed for the Raw Consciousness mission, the Raw mission that we're on. How are you, Mrs. Gio?
I am good. I am ready for a great show. I've been talking to Raw off and on all day, so I think he'll be here. I am just still floored by YouTube and everything that's happened with that. I can't understand it, for one thing, and I can't believe that that this is happening to us. But we're always going to be there for you guys. So
definitely. Nicholas
format.
Bravo says Chris is looking snazzy
Yes,
tonight. That's
he
right. I
is.
just got back from a meeting with the Illuminati, and they were giving me further instructions on what to do while our YouTube channel is blocked.
Well, regardless, you look great. You do look really good tonight.
Now I had a business deal that I had to do today, so I didn't have time. I literally walked in again, and I am still dressed in my business clothes.
He's even
today.
got his coat on still.
Yeah,
So.
well, I like the coat.
Yeah, I like the coat
kind
too.
of gives it a little bit of a.
It is pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was like, "Why are you all dressed up like that?" I'm like, "What do you mean dressed up? It's
just dressing nice."
Yeah. I mean, I don't really see that, but and you can see the hair slicked back in the ponytail.
You
today.
do look really hot
I
tonight.
do need to take the ponytail off. No, it kind of clashes with the outfit. Let's see. Maybe not. Anyways, so let's proceed.
You're really hot with it down or up, so.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Compliments from the queen.
Aww.
Yes. So in the first hour, we've got some pretty cool emails to go over and some of your experiences. And then we will be talking to look into DTube. Yeah, I need to look into some other alternatives. I mean, it's absurd. I already ranted about it in a previous video. You can find that on Facebook. But yeah, I'm still a little grumpy about it, as you can tell. It's one thing to get banned. It's another thing to not be even talking about that freaking information anymore. Like, I went out of my way not to talk about this damn Florida thing on YouTube so I don't hit that AI algorithm, and the AI still found something from 2013. So, it is what it is, though. Maybe we can talk about playing in the AI game right on the other side. Many people ask, Chris, how can I support Beyond the Veil? Well, first and foremost, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The more engagements a video gets, the more likely it is for YouTube's AI to recommend it to others with similar interests. Same goes with Facebook too. You can also find us on iHeartRadio.com. Just search for Beyond the Veil. We have a dedicated streaming channel where we play the best of BTV 24 hours a day. You can also send us questions, comments, and guest suggestions to info@beyondtheveilmedia.com. Finally, the most support you can give is by sending positive and loving energy to all of us here at Beyond the Veil and all of the Beyond the Veil viewers. Together, we are building a field of energy to rival the artificial intelligence control of this matrix. Take a moment to meditate on yourself, others around you, and tap into this amazing energy field. Now, let's get back to the show.
My dear traveler, the purpose of raw consciousness is never to destroy. It is always to create. Build bridges. Create happiness. And bring forth new life. We must live in the hope that mankind will draw together. And that we better understand each other. The more that we awaken, the easier this will become. Now rise. Follow your conductors. And fear no danger. As you step beyond the veil.
So I talk about playing within the bounds of the artificial intelligence machine, understanding the rules of the game so you can better navigate through the game. And part of this is also applied to on the internet as well. I mean, I think as above, so below, and into the digital realm even more so. But this is why I try to avoid using certain keywords and things like that, because I don't think that anybody at Google, looked at the YouTube video and then pulled it. I think if there was an AI purge of anything that had this particular keyword, the C word, we'll call it the C word, the CA word, which is a crisis. And then it has to do with people, players.
Playing a part.
Players, playing parts, yes, as Shakespeare would say. So the players. And so they just purged everything completely and totally like that. And this is why I say, stay away from those particular algorithms there. Hold on. Oh, I forgot. Having this all in the same thing is going to make those little beeps. But anyways, this is why I talk about staying within the algorithms and understanding the algorithms, not to self-censor yourself, but rather be tactful when you are delivering certain types of information so you can bob and weave around those algorithms. And the example that I made earlier is if you're in battle and there's a field of enemies and landmines and all that, you don't go running out in the middle of the field just blazing your guns, because you're going to either be shot or you're going to hit one of those landmines and get blown up, but rather to navigate through that battlefield strategically and in silence and stealth too. So there is a big purge going on right now with YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And it's not good. It's not good at all. But there are some crazy people out there too. I've already talked about this though, so I don't really want to talk about this anymore, because we talked about it yesterday. That show got pulled. We talked about it. I talked about it in another little quickie that I did earlier this morning. And so let's do something positive for this. Even though I'm feeling a little bit off today. There's been a lot of weird energies all week long. William Whitecrow passed away suddenly.
Yeah.
And that's kind of left a little bit of a depressing veil over the consciousness. Even though, as I've said, I'm not really sad. I'm sad for the family, and I can feel the family's grief and mourning and loss. But as a shaman, I understand he has more important things to do on the other side, on the shamanic, energetic level. But I really wanted to do a tribute show today for William, but I just couldn't put all the clips together. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. But if you go through our archives and type in William Whitecrow, he's made several appearances.
Or just Whitecrow.
Whitecrow is better term. Just go to TFR, because he's been on many shows. And he's also done shows on his own too, Quantum Quest, which was his radio show. And he's been doing it since last April. So there's almost a year of archives there at tfrlive.com. And Yeah, we greatly, greatly appreciate it. If you sign up for a TFR subscription and go to William Whitecrow's link, we'll make sure the family gets the
Donation.
donations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll continue to pay out the donations to the family, even though we usually don't if a host leaves. But in this particular
Oh, yeah.
case, we'll continue to do that to support the family. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so his work will go
It'll
on.
live on. Yeah.
It will, yeah, yeah. And I've been trying to learn a Native American burial rite to send him off. And I really couldn't find anything solid, but I was actually thinking about a process in my head. And as I was thinking about this with a different type of things based on the wedding rite, the wedding ceremony that he performed for us, then I saw an eagle fly by, and then I saw a crow fly by, and I
Aww.
thought, oh, well, that's confirmation from the universe right there. That's that.
Yeah.
And then it was funny as I was flipping through Facebook too. I saw a white crow, not anything related to William. It was something completely and totally
A
different.
white
But I
crow.
was talking to Sue, and Sue says, have you felt him? And I'm like, not really. And she goes, well, have you seen any crows around? And I'm like. And as soon as she said that, a white crow popped up on Facebook
Uh-huh.
in an unrelated post. Because I know a lot of people have been changing their profile pictures to that white crow picture. That's not what I'm talking about. This was something completely different. So I was like, oh wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
That is really neat.
Yeah.
I felt his presence since, since right before we found out. As soon as I knew that Sue wanted to talk to us, it's intuitively, I just knew something's happened to William. Something happened to William. And I'm so sorry for the family. I just, it's very sad, but like Chris
Definitely.
said, he needed to have stuff done on the other side. So can't fault him for that. We got a really interesting email that has a song that someone named Mike wrote for us.
Aw.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty cool.
Can you see what I see? Can you see what's true? This path we walk's not easy. This path I walk with you. The clowns we see on TV, the headline news that's fake. Consume, obey, keep quiet. Do not start to wake. For now we shed our old skin. We see the world as new. Though many walk among us, those that see are few. How did we start this sleepwalk? Lost our sense of place. Aliens among us, parasites from space. We've got to tell the world, our friends and family must know. Laughter, jokes, and ridicule don't interrupt the show. And that's it. That was really good.
Very nice.
That was really cool.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Mike.
Yeah, people have been sending in stuff like that. Somebody drew a sketch of both me and Cherie.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it
And,
is.
I was talking to Frank, and all of the teachers have left, like Terrence and William and several
Mhm.
others. And
No longer with us.
yeah. And what it's come down to is now we've become the teachers. We've
Yeah.
become the Terrence McKenna's out there, and the Dennis Leary's, not Dennis Leary.
Dennis Leary's.
comedian. What's that guy? Timothy Leary. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim
And we've
Leary.
become all of them. And so it's really cool to the student has become the teacher.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I was so glad that I was able to meet William, and I'm so glad that I was able to even come across Terrence McKenna's work. I'm so glad that we were able to meet Dennis McKenna, his brother. I'm just so grateful for all of these teachers that have come before us, that are kind of passing the torch along to the new leaders of the consciousness kind of. Not, well, I don't want to call it a movement because it's not really a movement. It's just a consciousness raising thing that's happening all over. And I love that we got to learn from the best.
A consciousness raising thing. Now, speaking of consciousness raising things, there's one thing that I've been wanting to do for a while now. And I want to get everybody's input out there. Like, will you guys and gals be okay if I did this? Would you be okay if I took a couple of weeks off to go into hyperspace and just focus on hyperspace? I've positioned myself right now to where all my work is done and everything's okay, so I don't have to worry about any of that. I've got one little project that I'm wrapping up, and as soon as that's done, I would like to literally spend a couple of weeks in the woods drinking ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
completely away from everything. but I want to make sure all you guys and gals are still here when we get back.
Right. Don't
'Cause
go
I
anywhere.
know how short attention spans are on the internet, and if we don't deliver all the time,
Every
then
week.
people lose interest.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, we hope that you guys and gals are supportive of that. And as you can tell, today's a little bit more somber
Yeah.
than normal because the energies have been
Really somber all week.
funky. What's
Yeah.
going on in the skies?
Oh, there's a lot of personal transits going on. His Saturn and Pluto are both in the 7th house of partnerships and relationships, and and I think that goes along with people passing away, that are really important teachers. That can also be attributed to a Saturn going through the 7th house in his natal chart. Well, in his transit chart for his natal chart. Astrologically, there really hasn't been that much going on. Everything that's been going on hasn't been that bad. I don't even think we have any planets in retrograde right now, and if we do, it's not any of the major personal planets like Mercury. But let me check this out real quick. It does look like, I apologize.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
there's-
there's been some weirdness. There's been like Saturn in what was that transit place? The house of
the 7th
partnerships
house.
and things
7th
like that.
house, yeah.
Things have just been all funky for everything. Anyways, let me
Yeah.
try to change the frequency here.
Let's
All
lift it
right,
up.
because you guys and gals are expecting raw consciousness, and that's what we need to get into.
Oh,
and
yeah, Jessica.
revelations and things like that.
Jessica said, still feeling the solar eclipse triple moon power. When there was a solar eclipse and then a blood moon, a super moon, and blue moon at the same time just a few weeks ago, and I think we're all still feeling that. That would make a lot of sense. Yeah.
It's been weird. Like Frank said that a couple of people died all of a sudden of heart attacks in his
Mhm.
life. And I was just talking to another person today who his friend just died, and he was a mutual friend.
Yeah.
Friend just died of a heart attack like 2 days ago, just like that.
Mhm.
Like there's this shift going on right now. And as we move through this shift, it's the leaving of one particular wave of energies,
Mhm.
and only the ones who are supposed to be here for this next step are still remaining. But there's a lot of us still remaining, but a lot of people are leaving at this particular time. It's very, very strange.
Well, it's almost like there's some kind of astrological cutoff point. You know how people talk about millennia as if everything happened in this millennia, and then this millennia, we had the discovery of science and the scientific method, and then in the 21st century, it's more like the space age, and we're getting to where we can go to Mars and things like that. I see it more as when astrological events line up a certain way, it activates or not deletes, activates or deactivates different energies, not just, with ourselves, but with each other. And so the entire world kind of goes through, it has its own kind of birth chart, so to speak. And the stars really do say a lot about how movements form, how activist movements form, how political parties are formed. It all really is relevant astrologically. And I think we're entering a new stage of something that it's going to be so difficult for some people to be able to be the raw consciousness in that they're going ahead and leaving, so that the ones that are left behind can handle it better. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, everything is always a test. Everything is always a new opportunity to be able to sharpen your sword and strengthen your muscles. And in the past week, like, it hasn't really been anything like, it's been negative, but it's
Mhm.
not like, oh my God, things like that. It's more like just some bombardment of negativity.
Mhm.
Bombardment of negativity outside. It's almost like standing in the middle, in the center of just all this chaos and destruction going on around you. And none of it is actually in your circle because you've been able to stand outside of all this, but it's happening all around so frequently and in such frequency that it's difficult to not get affected by just watching it. I think it may have to do with the Florida shooting too, and the way that there's a media circus all over again. Like it was like nice and calm for a while, and now it's like all of a sudden everybody's like jumping left and right and up and down in all kinds of ways like that. So the energies have been shooken up significantly.
Yeah.
And this is it's very easy at this particular time to get sucked back into that frequency that this entire construct is real, that this entire reality is real, and in actual fact, it's not. But even I'm feeling a little bit low energetically today from it feels like my energy's been sucked out, even though that's impossible to happen in an artificial simulation. See, that's how it can grab you and then pull you back in and make you still feel like it's real. And it's another opportunity to take a step out of that particular experience again and remind yourself over and over, like, hey, this is just a simulation. It's okay. Everything's okay. Everything's happening exactly the way it's supposed to in the simulation, and that's perfectly fine. But yeah, it's an interesting time. Emily Moyer may be joining us here in just a few minutes.
Excellent.
So yeah, we're going to talk about a couple of things that she's been unlocking. Her YouTube channel was also taken down.
Oh, was it?
Because of the
wow.
crisis actor thing. And you know what's funny is, like, I'm one of the only voices that's saying, hey, this guy's not a crisis actor.
He's not a crisis actor.
Shut him up. Well, wait a minute. I'm
agreeing with you.
But you know, I am close. I feel that I'm closer to the truth on this situation than anybody else is out there, unless they're also thinking along the same lines, which is that he's not an actor. He was a student, but they picked a student who happened to go to that school, who was the son of an FBI agent, who is willing to read a script. So you can tell he's not an actor because he's horrible on camera. I mean, people are having to remind him of his lines during interviews. That's an indication that he is not a professional actor. Stop calling this kid an actor.
He's not a professional at all.
He's a fraud. Okay, he was there at the shooting legitimately. He's a puppet. That's a better way.
Right.
He's a puppet that they haven't really gotten control of the vocal cords yet.
Yeah,
Simple
he's a
as
daddy FBI puppet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was Frank D said that they just found a tumor in his grandmother's stomach.
Oh,
so
of
I'm
course.
so sorry.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what I'm talking about. It's this kind of stuff. And I'm sorry, Frank D. I'm sorry to hear that for sure.
Yeah.
But this is like, with everything that I've heard, it doesn't surprise me at this point, because this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. It's been bombarding everybody around us, everybody that we know. They've been dealing with something majorly messed up like that.
Yeah.
But we'll get through it. We will get through it. Don't worry about
yeah.
that. We will get through it.
Yeah.
I don't know when these astrological transitions are changing, but I'm hoping it's going to be in the very, very near future.
I've also
felt all of our loving energy to your grandmother, for sure.
Definitely. I've also felt like there's a storm surrounding me at all times, and I'm just the eye of the storm. Just kind of everywhere I go, it's like chaos. And then I walk into it, I'm like, wait a second, this isn't chaos, it's just a simulation, so there can't be chaos in a simulation. It all does make sense. You just have to understand it better and really use your raw consciousness to understand it, because if you don't, then you get caught up in the storm. You have to be in the eye, where the calm place in the middle of the storm. But I think 2 weeks in the woods would be really good for you. Yeah, I think that would be a really good idea. Sharpen your sword.
2 weeks in Vegas, maybe.
Yeah, that works too.
No, I think that's the jacket talking.
Yeah, I think that's the jacket talking.
Take the jacket off.
You do look really good tonight, though.
Thank you.
But yeah, everybody seems to be getting, banned because of this crisis actor thing, and it's funny to me. This is the first shooting that I've noticed the crisis actors are actually paid more attention to by the media than the actual shooter.
This is a good point.
I haven't heard anything about the shooter. Have you heard anything about the shooter?
Right. And usually we're looking at the shooter, MK Ultra, things like that.
Yep.
I have a feeling, I didn't watch the video that Emily sent me earlier, but I have a feeling that it has to do with the shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Because Emily is tuned in like that. But no, you raise a really good point about that. I hate to talk about politics though. I hate
do
to talk
too.
about the political dramas.
Yeah, me too. Because they change so frequently that and you have to change your opinion so frequently because it turns out that what you heard from one alternative media outlet was completely wrong and completely biased and then you go to the mainstream and they're completely wrong and completely biased and it's really hard to tell what's even going on. So that's why I don't like to get into it too much. But it's interesting how so many people are getting banned even when they don't talk about the subject at hand that people are getting banned for. So,
Well, just the fact that they're banning people for particular
Yeah.
subjects. I mean, there's some stuff that is legitimately dangerous. Like that whole thing with the pizza and the kids and how pointing it to the pizza parlor wound up with some guy going over there with an AR-15 or something like that. And he shot into the ground,
mhm,
but he discharged his weapon in the middle of the restaurant.
right.
That was complete and total misdirection. If anybody
Mhm.
was watching the show yesterday, we played about 50 minutes of that film that we never released. And so we never touched the pizza parlor because it was misinformation. There was nothing there. But they wanted you to focus on that. But it can lead to some very dangerous things. So they use that to censor people.
And start to ban free speech.
Yeah, and start to ban free speech. And, on one hand, you can go, it's kind of understandable. You got to look at people's safety. On the other
Mhm.
hand, it's banning free speech and you're opening up the door or letting the camel's nose in the tent. And you let the camel's nose in the tent and then the whole camel comes in the tent. So I've talked about the importance of discernment. I've talked about the importance of professionalism. I've talked about the importance of non-bias investigation. And this is why I've been harping on about this for years, because this is exactly what they use these crazy people out there to paintbrush anybody that is speaking on anything except for the mainstream media talking points.
Ra is ready for us and ready to come on
Awesome.
in half an hour. So excellent.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Good. I think the energy is going to
I think it's going to go back up. Especially if we get Emily on for a few minutes.
Yeah.
She always raises the energy big time here at BTV. She's one of our favorite guests.
Patty said Chris is going off to the woods for 2 weeks and Shirley's going to Vegas.
What did you learn while drinking ayahuasca? I won big.
Yep. I need to take a break. It's just all just boom, just hit all at once.
Yeah.
So yeah. But you got to stay in that higher frequency. Considering everything that we've gone through, this is a relatively high frequency. Like there haven't been any tears shed. There hasn't been any real oh my God, but the energy has souped down a little bit.
Yeah. It's just felt like a really hard week for a lot of people. A lot of people got bad news this week. A lot of people got shocking and terrifying or, sad news this week. So we're here to raise the frequency a little bit. So hopefully we can do that without too much trouble. I think we can.
Yes, Emily will
We're
be
usually
joining
really good.
us in 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
So we will raise the frequency, ladies and gentlemen, right on the other side. And of course, hour number 2 and 3, Rock Castaldo will be joining us. And we're going to have a kick-ass show, take some names, and identify some of the deeper levels of gnosis that are buried under all of these crazy energies.
Yes, definitely. I'm looking at a particular astrological conjunction that I'll talk about in the second hour.
Excellent. We will be right back.
Welcome back, traveler. Take a deep breath and relax. As we continue to journey deeper beyond the veil.
All right, let's change gears for this half hour. Once again, for anybody joining us, Rock Castaldo will be joining us in the second and third hour of the broadcast. We're going to talk about all things beyond the veil, but right now, we do have our favorite rave vixen and professional MK Ultra deprogrammer on, straight from Off Planet Radio, Emily Moyer. She's got some interesting insight into the shooting and much, much more. And I hear that she is unable to stream on YouTube as well. There has definitely been a purge going on. So, Emily, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Just want to clear things up. I'm not a professional MK Ultra deprogrammer. I actually anybody who says they're that, in my opinion, stay away. I have worked really hard at deprogramming myself, and I'm happy to share with other people some of the tools, tricks, and experiences that have helped me to do that. And anything I can do to help people deprogram themselves, I'm happy to do. But that is the only person that should deprogram you is you. You can have friends that sort of help you through that, or people who are sort of part of your, your kind of team on that sense. But if somebody tells you they're a professional MK Ultra deprogrammer, run the other way.
That's a good point. I've never really ran into a professional MK Ultra deprogrammer. There was one guy who was asking women to go into his hot tub with him for deprogramming.
Yes.
So yeah, I think things like that take place for sure. I don't think you do that. So
no,
okay.
Not at all.
All right, because if you do, give out your websites, because I'm sure a lot of listeners would love to.
Yeah, for sure. So you can find us at offplanetradio.com. Our YouTube channel is Off Planet Media. Support us at patreon.com/offplanetmedia. And I'm also now happy to say that I am available for consultations on holistic wellness and conscious lifestyle choices. The idea being to use your body and your choices about your life to help you sort of get unstuck and work through your trauma and become the you you're supposed to be. So, yeah.
Excellent. So, tell us what's going on in the world of Off Planet Radio. I hear that you two have been part of the purge.
Yeah. So first of all, before we get into this, I just want to let you guys know, I know you guys had a rough night last night and you were upset, and then you're feeling a little bit better today, but everybody's talking about your show. And in fact, someone who was in our Patreon group chat this morning just couldn't say enough about how powerful the show was and how excellent your documentary was. So I'm looking to be able to see that soon, because she was really impressed by that.
Oh, wow.
And,
really?
Yeah.
Wow. So I thought we just shit the bed last night.
That's what I felt like too.
Well, so another friend of mine who loves you guys, she felt your energy and she was upset by it because she loves you guys, and she sort of, that also sort of speaks to how powerful you guys and your show were. You know what I mean? So I heard both sides of it. Neither of them said it was bad, or, you know what I mean? They both thought, it's obviously dark stuff and not a great topic, but it was powerful and people are talking about it. And, so I'm interested I heard you a little bit this morning. I didn't get to watch what was posted from last night or see that documentary you guys aired, but
they pulled it from Facebook
they pulled
immediately.
it from Facebook.
Of course.
Like that.
Yeah. So
we'll find another way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But, So
underground.
Well, that's actually, and that's the whole point.
We'll have to pass out flyers on where you can watch it.
Where you can watch it.
Back points and shit.
Come to this warehouse.
That's actually the point of this. And Randy and I were talking about this a little bit in our group this morning. And, he and I have been talking about how we want to handle this. We didn't get our streaming cut because we don't live stream. But our show, so we had a last minute impromptu show on Tuesday. We were going to actually take Tuesday off. But, Randy and I both came across some interesting things in regards to this, particularly some of the things Randy found. So we felt compelled to, which is, our line of things is usually a lot different than what everybody else, even in the sort of conspiracy realm, is doing because of our, background and our interest in the whole mind control aspect of things. So we did a show and we put it right up. And I think, Randy stayed up all night doing it because he knew that we sort of had a window in the middle of the night to get it up and have it be up for a little while. We knew it was going to get pulled down. So it was up for probably about 6 or 7 hours. And then it got pulled and we got a bullying and harassment strike, which we've never gotten anything like that before. And while it's obviously upsetting on a certain level, same thing goes for you guys, that we live in this inverted world where telling the truth is considered bullying and harassment and lying is considered the truth.
Mhm.
So that is upsetting on one level, but it reminded us that like we actually don't really care that much about YouTube because we consider ourselves to be underground radio, which is what we consider you guys to be too, which is why we feel a kinship with you, and that
Aw.
we will always find another way. And sometimes the other way might be, we're working on building out our platform so we can host everything on our own website. You know what I mean? We quickly put the video back up at Vimeo and and on our Patreon site and allowed people to view it on our Patreon site for free and people who aren't our patrons. And so if YouTube was trying to get us down, they also helped get us about 35 new subscribing patrons this week. So thanks YouTube.
Nice. We may need to do that because
Yeah.
it's getting bad. I mean, it's really bad. But see, what they don't realize is that if you bury us, we're seeds. So
Yep.
we're gonna grow.
Also, we're from the underground. We emerged from inside the earth. We're not
Right.
these like weird invader people that you know what I mean. So
Right. They think darkness is their ally. They only
Yeah.
adopted the dark.
Mhm.
We were
Yeah.
born in it,
Uh-huh.
molded by it.
Yeah.
You got it, buddy. So and we've in some ways, and I don't mean this in any kind of new age way. We've always had to understand how to fight in the dark. We know how to look for that little crack, that little crease of light, and expand that because we come from the dark. Whereas they're trying to wield darkness as a weapon, and you know what I mean. So it's been an interesting week, but sort of the line that we kind of looked at with this is we're not really concerned with like crisis actors or any of that stuff, or you know what I mean, like we understand that there's many
That's so
levels
2012.
right, but your video is great, like that you did that to me, like that's all the proof, and the discussion should end there. And also like people, like everyone who's ever on CNN, whether they work for CNN or whether they're interviewed by CNN, they're a crisis actor, whether they're a paid one or not.
Right.
Right, like
The
that's
Crisis
whole,
Actors News Network. Yeah.
right. So it's like that's like kind of a moot point for us. What we got really into looking at was more the idea that sort of this high school and this area is a grooming pen for kids for MK Ultra.
Mhm.
That some of these kids have been groomed for these positions, and some of them it seems have already, maybe even had internships at CNN. These are going to be the next
Mhm.
Anderson Cooper. These are going to people who then are going to be the activists representing all different kinds of intersectional identity politics going forward. That's what
Mhm.
they're groomed for. We're looking at connections to underground pedophilia and human trafficking networks that are rampant
Mhm.
in that area. We're looking at Elsagate kind of material on YouTube and how that's being, the involvement, the interesting backgrounds of some of the parents of some of these children. And they have, I'm not going to name names here because that will do exactly what they want us to do.
Right.
But they have the kinds of incredibly suspicious backgrounds that I know you guys are familiar with. These backgrounds that it couldn't possibly be one person having all this background, unless of course you're MK Ultra with many alters. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
exactly.
very.
I
interesting.
caught my niece watching some of those videos. And I
Mhm.
asked my sister, I said, did you know she's watching this? She goes, oh yeah, she watches some really disturbing stuff. I don't know how she gets to them, but she just knows how to get them. 2 years old.
Yeah.
And she's finding
Yep.
these crazy Elsa Gate videos.
Yeah. So So Randy found one that was just like beyond incredible, and it connects right back to one of the parents in question. I'll just leave it at that. People can go to either my Facebook page, Emily Moyer, or Randy Moggin's Facebook page and find the link to our video. It's up on Vimeo, or you can go to our Patreon page and it's there for free. We are going to be digging deeper this Tuesday. We will probably not be posting it on YouTube. It'll probably go to Vimeo and Patreon again. We'll be digging deeper with a good friend of ours who has an interesting background with a lot of these things that we've talked about, and who attended that school several years ago and has a lot of very interesting things to say about the school. We'll be having her on in the first hour, and then we'll be roundtabling it up with her and our good friend Robert Phoenix, who's been doing a really good job covering this as well. He's been linking this symbolically to the Children's Crusade of 1212 and to leftover elements from the Bolshevik Revolution. And some of the things he's pointed out have been really interesting. Also to some of the Chabad, and I can't remember, there's another name, but like some sort of like Jewish kind of mafia in that area. And so we're going to get into sort of the deeper levels of all of this. And we in our Patreon group chat today, we even got into the significance of the name and the person who was Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and what that area of land possibly represents. Like this was the typical, these events are never just what they seem. There are so many levels. It's always got occult significance. It's always got a ritual aspect to it. It's always got mind control going on. It's always got, agitation from the outside. Like, it is a dumb waste of time at this point to be having the argument over whether people died or whether people didn't die or whatever. People always die in these things. Maybe not the ones they say died, but the ones who won't go along with the program,
people
they die.
always die.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Let me jump in for just a moment because, damn it, I was holding on to this thought all the way until now. Okay. Insanity is sanity. Are you familiar with Amir?
Yeah.
Okay. So he did a great video where he breaks down how everything is basically controlled by an AI. And this is why we see the same thing happening over and over. It's like you're seeing the computer code. You see 3, 33, 13. You see all the same repeating things because it's all done by an AI. What do you think about that?
Well, totally. And in my opinion, the AI, the simulation, the containment system, whatever the video game, whatever this is we're in, is fritzing out because it's making itself so obvious. I'm not going to name the names here for the reasons we've already discussed, but if you go look at our video, we talk about the impossibility of some of the names of these people and the role that they played in this. Just the whole like.
Well, give us a couple. Give us a couple just to kind of get an idea.
So the main kid who we've been talking about that's been interviewed on CNN, the one whose name is another word for pig, right?
Yes.
Okay, so he was on this one video with the girl whose last name was Friend, right? So and so
her last name was Friend,
right? And then you also there's like a CNN article that was written by someone named Dakin and One or Dakin Andoni, but Dakin and One. So we're talking about family genetic bloodlines here, and the friend. So the kid, someone who's part of the family, and one, the friend, right? One of the teachers who supposedly saved a bunch of children. His name is Guard.
What?
Right. Okay. And so this, like,
the AI is malfunctioning. There's no other way to look at this.
It's even the fact that like the school is Marjorie. If you look into who Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was. Mm-hmm. I mean, even she was an activist to save the Everglades when other people just thought it was a swamp. Trump is trying to drain the swamp, and the deep state is trying to keep him from doing that. Whatever you think about Donald Trump, I don't think I think he is part of the swamp, but symbolically, like all of this kind of stuff. Even the name Stoneman is like Mason. Douglas is and whether we've talked about. Masonry is what you make of it, and it's not necessarily that everyone's bad who's a Mason, but they definitely like to wind that into this stuff. You know what I mean? And a Douglas is a dark stream. So we have like the dark stream of Masonry, right? You know what I mean? Like it's super. I mean, you can just find a ton of stuff. She was an activist for women's suffrage, and we're talking about this being the children's crusade. If you look at some of these kids, like there's now going to be a new kind of intersectional identity politics. It's going to be kids who were like either mixed race and so suffering oppression that way, or who are gender fluid. And if you look at some of these people who are being shown over and over on the media, they match that profile, and they're also now survivors of school shootings. So that's going to be a new kind of intersectional identity politics. And they're going to, these kids are being groomed to be activists. I mean, look at the way those kids were just shouting and screaming and behaving at that stage town hall meeting the other day.
I thought they just ate too many Tide Pods.
But that's exactly it. That's
had too many bath salts.
I mean, those things, those Tide Pod challenge, and ice bucket challenge, those are all mass mind control events to see how well they have the public under their thumb. So absolutely, that is part of it. And now they're just doing this thing where they're going to have this march on Washington, this like children's march on Washington. And they had this like walkout the other day where kids at high schools all over the country walked out in unison with these kids and whatever. Of course, this is all being funded and brought to us by the usual suspects, right? Center for American Progress and all that kind of, maybe that's not, there was another group that I can't think the exact name of some of these people's parents are connected to in some ways. But, they're going to have this march, and like, what's going to happen at this march? Are they going to use that as a chance to have like a patsy white nationalist MK Ultra person shoot up the children's march who are marching against guns? Like, there's so many possibilities with this. I mean, this one has it all. And, but yeah, I think so in some ways it's like you can go, well, are they trying to bait us? Because look, they just pulled you and the two of you and me and Randy back into something that we don't do anymore. But you know what I mean?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So they
we don't talk about this crap, and all of a sudden here we are talking about it because they pulled that particular video.
Right.
But in another way, like Randy and I, we made the decision. It wasn't like we got tricked into doing this. We made the decision, that this one, like, because of our, the things that we have knowledge about with mind control, that this one was a perfect example to expose some other layers of this and the connections behind it that don't present itself in all of these This one, we decided to do it. And, so it was a conscious choice. We don't feel like we've been duped or tricked. And we weren't even upset when our video got taken down because we knew it was coming. I mean, it's a disappointing comment on the state of the world, but it's not like, it didn't really, we knew it was coming. And, like we made, that's kind of our stance on this, and it's also, but with that, they're trying to bait us, but they're risking their simulation, their system is fritzing out. Like, this is getting so stupid. It is so, I mean, like, there's all these dark and icky undertones that deserve some attention and to be pulled apart on a certain level. But on another level, this is like, I mean, if there weren't really gross things that involved if there weren't some real human beings that could be players involved in this, then we would just say this is just like a bunch of NPC nonsense. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, there are some players that aren't as awakened or aren't as studied in some of these things as we are yet. That are getting caught up in this and being distracted and pulled from their path. Mm-hmm. And and it's we feel a level of responsibility in at least saying something. Like, I don't know how much we feel like we can get any individual to change or whatever, but whenever they have their moment of awakening, our stuff will be there waiting for them to look at. And same for you guys.
That's beautiful.
Good point.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if it doesn't get all scrubbed from the internet. And that's what I think. Shuri and I make a lot of these videos, and we think about people watching them after we're long gone, the way that we watch Terrence McKenna videos and things like that. And we always try to think about that. But if they're going to scrub everything right off the internet, well, there you go.
Yeah. I mean, you guys have been smart in that you guys host a lot of your own stuff, and you're not reliant on YouTube and Facebook.
Not
you guys
completely.
use them as tools. Right. Obviously, we've experienced tremendous growth this year. I mean, and because of YouTube. So while we've appreciated it, like, we are making backup and contingency plans. And I'm telling you, we're making our plans the same way we used to make plans for if the party got shut down. Where are we going to go next? What are we going to do? What's our communication system going to be? Who are our allies? You know what I mean? And I think that's actually
I'm still rolling. Where am I going to go?
Right. I think
it was serious. It was a serious matter. It really was.
Yeah, you're still rolling. You had to get in the car.
The struggle is intense.
Right? The struggle was real.
Yeah. So, I think we're just taking this as a chance to sort of like, tighten up how we do things and get ourselves moved over to our own platform, quicker than we had initially planned. And we'll use these tools while they still serve us. But as soon as they don't anymore, hasta la vista, man.
Right.
I think this is why it's important to learn telepathy. People are asking, what happens if the internet goes down? How are we going to communicate? We have to become telepathic.
Yep. We were talking about that in our group chat today. And, many years ago, Randy proposed the idea of doing the broadcast telepathically. And, he was somewhat joking, but like at this point, we're going to start playing with some of these ideas. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Or, and even just use the way we communicate with each other that isn't telepathic as like a stepping stone towards that, like really getting to know each other's sort of quirks and, and little, sort of subtle things about them. You know what I mean? To understand how to communicate with each other. We're starting, we're tightening up our group of people who are our core listeners. And just practicing that, it's just like you have synchronicity with people, you think about them and then they call 2 minutes later, like start playing on that, start expanding that experience, like have the first minute or two of the conversation before you actually pick up the phone. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that I also have a good friend, Danny Katz, who's been on our show and who I'm doing a new project with, she's a really interesting person. She calls herself a quantum language hacker, and she's sort of interested in basically like repairing the way humans use language as a step back towards telepathy, because our language has become so degraded, and the way we speak to each other and the kind of, it changes our own mindset about what we're doing, but also changes how we communicate. And it's sort of like a mid step, like a progress towards returning to our original state, which was telepathic and all knowing.
Right. Terrence McKenna used to say, we're all just monkeys making mouth noises. That's really what talking is. And apparently somebody along the line, millions of years ago or thousands of years ago, depending on your bent, whatever bent you are, somebody came up with the idea of, I'm going to make mouth noises and then you're going to hear those mouth noises and that's going to mean this. And then this other mouth noise is a little bit different and it means this. And I don't know how it happened, but it's gotten to the point that using language is almost the worst kind of communication at this point because there's so much.
So we're all thinking the same thing. So the telepathy is already working because we were talking about this very thing in our group chat today, and we were. I brought up. I forget whose work it was. It's one of the guys who like does a lot of the work on like all the megaliths and stuff. And he talked about how as humans have become more language based, they've become messier and less organized. And if you look at the oldest megaliths, they have the least amount of like pictographs on them, which was early forms of language, the least amount of pictographs, but they're the most perfect. They're the most geometrically perfect. They're the most, they're built, they're the most sound in terms of like all the pieces being uniform and stuff like that. And as there became more pictographs and more language, like the megaliths became increasingly imperfect. And so our ability to sort of, communicate telepathically what we were doing with each other was far superior before we had this mouth noise nonsense.
Well, and Nicholas Zervos just pointed out that the only reason we have these mouth noises is because we had to, because someone shut off our telepathy at the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Ooh, good point.
We used to be able to be telepathic.
Yeah. I mean, I think the telepathy existed in the same kind of way that we used to be. And when I say this, I don't mean it in any kind of transgender way, but we used to have a much more unified brain that like right and left brain worked together instead of the situation we're in now where like they're only ever working together when we're sleeping. And right and left brain worked together. And that meant we also were in better touch and balance with our male and female characteristics and possibilities. And I think that like people's awareness to this as it's rising, that's what a lot of this push towards transgenderism is about. It's about externalizing something that should be an internal process, which is coming to terms with the male and female aspects of yourself, and balancing your creative power with your intellect, and balancing your aggressive tendencies with your sympathetic and empathic tendencies to create a well-rounded human. And that I think that split happened at the same time that our loss of telepathic ability occurred.
Right. It's taking something spiritual that should be spiritual and then and kind of mutating it into an ego-based kind of materialistic form of it. When you get into the whole transgender thing, I'm not against transgender people. I think they're awesome people. I've met quite a few, but it's turning something that is spiritual into something physical, and then it loses all the magic when you do that.
I agree with you. Like anybody who actually is transgender and that is sort of their authenticity is one thing. I think a lot of people right now are being pushed as part of this sort of social movement trend. Like people think like people are unhappy and dissatisfied with the world and with life, and they've like attached it to something that it may not really be what it's about. And, for most of these people, it would be a more powerful spiritual and internal experience to transcend and include as opposed to, chop off.
Divide and chop off.
Well, the way I see the transgender movement, because there are some people that are genuinely, they feel like that genuinely.
Right.
And I've met some transgendered people who are legitimately female. I mean, everything about them is female. But I think what it is, it's an attack on consciousness.
Yeah.
Because consciousness is supposed to be balanced left and right.
Between the two, male and female.
And, they're taking it and bastardizing it in gender instead of consciousness.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not in any way like a statement or a judgment about any individual or whatever. I agree with you guys completely in everything you just said. I just wish people before they make, some of these people are making these decisions before they've had any real like spiritual experiences as a human being. You know what I mean? And in some cultures, the like highest spiritual people in those cultures are people with hermaphroditic qualities, right? So like by changing your body and making it not so much that way, you may be cutting yourself off in some cases, not in all cases, from your highest spiritual potential. At least if you do that before you know what I mean? Before you've recognized
let me ask you this though, because this is kind of the flip side of the coin here. So who decides what's female traits and what's male traits? For instance, guys are supposed to wear pants, girls wear skirts. Who says that? The society says that.
Yeah.
Isn't that at its very core a form of programming?
Totally.
See?
Yeah.
There you go. So the program is all up and down the line. Hey, stick with us for this next short segment, and then we have Rock Castaldo coming up, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back as we step even further beyond the veil.
Phase 1 has been completed. Phase 2 will be initiated momentarily. Please remain seated while we prepare to go deeper. You can visit us at www.beyondtheveilradio.com. You are listening to Beyond the Veil with Chris and Sherry Geo on iHeartRadio. Before the soul can see, the harmony within must first be attained, and fleshly eyes be rendered blind to all illusion. As you step beyond the veil,
Coming up in T-minus 5 minutes from deep within the eye, it is Ra Castaldo, but another quick segment with Emily Moyer of Off Planet Radio. And, I don't know what's been going on with me tonight, but I've had really great thoughts, and then they just poof, just disappear and just leave right when they're about to come out of my mouth.
And
do you ever
it's
have that
gone.
happen?
Yes, almost every show. I have at least one of those, so I know how you feel.
It figures. So let me go back here just for a moment and just pulling this thought back out. Okay, so it has to do with the code that we were talking about earlier. Insanity is Sanity brought up the idea of the program that's playing out a code. And really it sounds like with what you were describing earlier, Emily, with guard, for example, and friend and things like that, it sounds like the code is just using the placeholders and it's not actually changing out the variables. I don't know if you know about computer programming. I think a lot of people do in this day and age, but that's exactly what it sounds like. Like it's no longer using variables. Now it's just using the placeholders.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten really silly. Like the same with like the Vegas situation. There was like a lot of really weird things in that. You know what I mean? With all of these things, like I brought up a couple of other times on shows that like some of our hints should have been that we had Hurricane Harvey, the Harvest Festival, and the Harvey Weinstein incident all within a few weeks. It was like trying to generate some kind of event related to that name, and it like fritzed out and did all these different things. We also had Hurricane Sandy followed by Sandy Hook, and the Hurricane
I
Sandy.
remember that.
Hurricane Sandy moved in a hook shape around northeast. But the other one that's interesting, I also spend some time looking at like what's going on, like in the more slightly off mainstream, but still political kind of people. Like I pay a little attention to people like Dave Rubin and Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore and things like this, and the intellectuals that they're talking to that like. Some of them may have some potential to wake up. And one of the weird things that happened over the summer was we had in May or June, there was these very strange protests at Evergreen College in Portland that were basically like, students claiming that Evergreen College had this huge race problem. And they blamed this guy, Brett Weinstein, for he's an evolutionary biologist who operates on facts, right? As being a racist when actually his entire life has been about creating equity and fighting racism. But this is how silly their movements got. But his name was Weinstein, right? So then a few months later, we got the Harvey Weinstein, which is pronounced differently, but spelled the same. But his wife's name is Heather Haying, okay? And the girl who died in the Charlottesville protests also, and also about race, her name was Heather Heyer.
Wow.
So we're getting all of these things, like double spitting of like something funny is going on here. Like it's not either they're using it either way. It speaks to code and some sort of programming and simulation. Either they're using it as a way of communication, or these are events that are programmed in to happen, and whatever needs to occur to make sure they happens. And like literally, I think that's why some of these events look so messy, and you can't tell if it was like a false flag or a hoax, or if it was a team of hitmen, or if it was an MK Ultra patsy, or if it was the mafia. Or what it is, because like there are many things. It has to happen. The event has to happen, and there's like many groups deployed because they're all being triggered by the same code in the simulation.
Wow. It seems like things are being repeated over and over and over again.
Yep.
Gives new meaning to being out of the loop.
Especially if many of the people that are involved in these events are NPCs that are programmed.
Yes.
And
I don't mean to cut you off.
triggered.
I don't mean to cut you off,
That could definitely be the case.
But Emily, give us your website real quick.
Once again, offplanetradio.com. You can find us there. And thanks for having me. Say hello to my buddy Raw, and also you guys condolences on the loss of your friend William Whitecrow.
Awesome.
All right,
Thank you so
love
much.
you.
Love you. Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back with the one and only Ra Castaldo right here on Beyond the Veil. Hi everyone, Chris Gio here from Beyond the Veil. I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about the Beyond the Veil journey. It all started on November 5th, 2009, and has since evolved into what it is today. We traveled through the truth movement, politics, ancient aliens, DMT, consciousness, you name it. And we've interviewed some really awesome people, like David Icke, Michael Tsarian, Rick Strassman, Joe Rogan, and many more. Well, we have come a very long way, and some shows seem a world apart from where we are today. Each show acted as a stepping stone to expanding our consciousness. You can get almost 10 years of downloads by visiting tfrlive.com/beyondtheveil. You'll not only be supporting the show, but you'll also get access to tens of thousands of archives from dozens of other radio shows in the topics of conspiracy analysis, geopolitics, and spirituality. That's tfrlive.com/beyondtheveil. Now, let's get on with the show.
Fellow travelers, always remember to walk uprightly and circumscribe your desires as we travel upon the level of time to that undiscovered state of consciousness, traveling to the place where once obtained, no traveler returns. The place of raw consciousness which awaits us when we have passed beyond the veil.
All right, we will try to make contact with the elusive Ra Castaldo as soon as we can.
He does have a newborn.
He does, yes, and she is getting big.
She's getting
and
huge.
She's adorable.
She's so pretty.
And we sent her a little stuffed Anubis, which was the cutest thing. He sent me a picture of
her with the little Anubis.
With the little Anubis. It's
watching
adorable.
over her.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cute.
Let me see if I can find it for everybody.
Well, and while you're looking at that, I just wanted to point out I just got an idea, and I get these really funny, weird ideas. And tell me out there if you think it's crazy. But I'm wondering if the AI is using codes to trigger certain NPCs in certain areas to carry out their part, whatever their part is in a false flag event or a staged event of some sort. They get triggered. And then in their minds, they really did do what they think they did. They don't realize that they've been triggered to play their part in all this, whether they're a first responder or they're a chief of police or they're a firefighter or they're a teacher or they're the actual student that's shooting these places up or they're an extra shooter that's kind of on standby. Some of them may not even realize that they're part of something like this. And that's what makes it so believable to the general public is the fact that these, some of them look absolutely genuine. I'm wondering if maybe they were triggered, but they think they don't know that they've been triggered. So they even think that they're genuine. I'm wondering maybe something like that. Oh, Emily thinks I'm right.
That's a really good point. And, we were talking about, it's funny you use the word trigger because that's key right there. Why is the word triggered in our consciousness over and over and over again now? Mm-hmm. I never really connected the two but that's exactly what it's called. It's called a trigger. Mm-hmm. But there's a guy named Darren Brown, I want to say. I want to confirm this real quick. But Darren Brown, he is a hypnotist. And he does a show on the UK. Darren Brown. Yeah, it is Darren Brown. If you look up The Heist, if you look up several other things, he does these shows where he gets a group of people and gets them in to believe that they're going to partake in this business seminar. And this business seminar, what he's actually doing is he's picking people out on who can be easily manipulated. So the first thing he does, for example, in this one instance, is he tells everybody to go grab a chair. And there's only a certain amount of chairs. And so everybody that doesn't have a chair is left out because they were hesitating and didn't know if they should stand up or not. So they were questioning his commands. So he was like feeling them out like that. And then as the show progresses, he goes and he picks a certain group of people, like 3 or 4 out of a group of like 200 or 100 people or however many participants there are in this particular experiment. And as things are moving along, he's trying to get them in different episodes to, number 1, commit robbery. Number 2, to kill somebody. Number 3, to confess to a murder that they didn't actually commit. Now, of course, nobody's really getting killed. There's really no murder or any of that. But he was hypnotizing people to go into a store and shoplift candy, and then also playing this song that was supposed to spark like excitement within them and things like that. And while he was doing that, he was showing like the color green, the color green, the color green. And at the end, when he's actually when he's triggering these people to go out and commit these robberies, for example, you see this green ball come by and this car drives by and they're blaring the exact same song, and he gives them all a toy gun and they pull the toy gun out. There's like 4 of them in a row. They pull the toy gun out and they see this guy with a big bag of money from a armored truck, and they go and they rob him. And they were programmed to do all of this from beginning to end. The other one where the guy was programmed to believe that he had committed this murder. He was staying in this hotel room on this resort, and throughout the course of the stay, they were programming him heavily, 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 until he woke up in the middle of the lawn in the golf course. And when he got back in the house, they had told him that there was a murder. And so, because of all the programming and all the events, he wound up by himself getting up and going to the police station, or what he thought was the police station, which was actually just a setup, and going to the police station and confessing to a murder that he didn't commit. So people are wondering, like, can this MK Ultra mind control actually work? And this guy is like proving it on a television show. They're doing one on Netflix now that's about to be released, and it's can they convince somebody to push somebody else off of a building? And he's got a couple of different videos where he's like getting people to like just slap each other, for example. And he's programming them throughout this whole time. And then he does this particular trigger, and one person will slap the other one. And they ask him, why do you do that? I don't know. I just felt this overwhelming urge to just slap this person. I don't know why. And he was being programmed the entire time. So yeah, it's right there. And people were freaking out like, oh my God, they're programming people. But no. Move that to the side for a second. It gives you a good demonstration on how some of this programming actually works. And it can work. Some of his techniques don't have to be person to person. Like some of the things that he was doing, some of the methods can be done through the television. He says that he leaves out the hypnosis part because it's according to the UK law, you can't actually show hypnosis because the people can be hypnotized at home. So they skip that part where he's actually like doing the hardcore hypnosis on them. But yeah, it's really, really interesting. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that like Emily was saying, let's just say you're in 2012 and you live in Connecticut. You live in Sandy Hook, everything is normal, and then Hurricane Sandy hits in October 22nd, 2012. During this Hurricane Sandy, all you hear about is Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Sandy. And there's something that's said in the media that is triggering you in preparation for the December 14th, 2012, just 8 weeks later, Sandy Hook happens. What if you're a first responder in one of those events? Of course, you're going to do what you were triggered to do ahead of time, like you were prepped ahead of time to do this, and you don't even realize it. And then afterwards, when people are saying, oh, it was a fake shooting, nobody died, look at the FBI, they aren't even listing any dead bodies for 2012, that makes no sense. It's still in their minds. They did what they were required to do, and they did the right thing. And how dare you? I was there. I saw. When really you didn't see.
How many
triggers.
people out there right now are sitting there with a trigger, just waiting to go off?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but do you remember that Joker thing that Alex Jones did?
Yes.
And do you remember one of his listeners dressed up like the Joker and went out
Mm-hmm.
and shot some people?
Yes.
I don't know. I think he was shooting cops or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that.
That felt like a trigger.
Mm-hmm. To me too.
Yeah.
It was just too intense, and it was too intense for it to be a joke. It
Yes.
didn't feel like a joke to me.
The Queen of Triggers is on with us right now. She's decoded everything.
She really has. I love this girl.
Emily's back with us. Emily, what do you think about these ideas?
So yeah, I think so. Triggers. There's all kinds of triggers. Like there's ones that are placed there nefariously. One of your listeners just brought up in the chat that there's some that we programmed ourselves with to remember who we are, and that's very true as well. And part of the work of deprogramming yourself is to figure out what code was placed there by someone else, what code was placed there by you, all of that kind of stuff. And it isn't just people who've had a direct MK Ultra experience that need deprogramming. At this point, because of the influence of mass media and obviously with the internet and all this kind of stuff, but just also our connection to one another, we all could use a process of deprogramming ourselves and starting to look into what makes us, things can be as simple as you hear a word or you see something or you smell something and you have a funny reaction to it. Now, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but it's important to be aware of it. Right? Notice the subtle changes in your body, and you'll start to recognize what is something that is authentic to yourself and what is something that is coming from an outside layer. If that trigger thing makes you visualize something that is not something that is in your normal realm of thought, then that's a sign that it could be something for outside of yourself. If it is a trigger that stimulates a memory or a feeling that is something you were kind of almost can grab onto from the time you were younger, or even possibly from a different life, past or future,
Mm-hmm.
or in another dimension or whatever. Those are the ones you want to kind of pay attention to. I had something I have lots of these stories, but I'll share one that was kind of interesting that happened a few months ago. I had this really strange dream where I saw there was all these, there was many aspects to the dream. There was all these people in my bedroom that didn't belong there. Some of whom I seemed like they were trying to pretend they were people that I knew, but weren't. And I was trying to throw them out of my room. And there was this one person standing in the corner over by the TV that looked sort of familiar to me, but it took me a while to remember who it was. But what he was doing is he was standing in front of my smart TV and in front of it saying the word sleeper cell. And I woke up, I jumped, I woke up with a start and I was oh my God, what is that? And is that, could that be them trying to trigger me with something as if I'm part of a sleeper cell that was supposed to do something? Or is there a cell dormant in my body that needs to be reawakened so I can remember something about myself, right? There's many sides to this. And so you really have to spend a lot of time holistically looking at this to get to know what means what to you. But what was funny is when I finally remembered who the guy looked like who said that. You guys remember that movie? I can't remember the name of the movie, but Andre 3000 from Outkast played that guy where he was describing the reptilian brain.
I don't think I've seen that. It doesn't ring a bell.
He was sitting there on a bed explaining the whole part of the whole thing about how humans have a reptilian part of their brain and a mammalian part of their brain. I've never seen the whole movie. I've just seen that clip somewhere. And the guy who was standing in the corner was looked almost exactly like him and dressed like Andre 3000. It was very interesting. But there's many possibilities with a lot of this stuff. They don't for the most part, sometimes they use dumb inserts and triggers and whatever, but a lot of the ones that are the most useful for long-term programming are things that could have another meaning to you. And so you'll hold on to them, right? It makes a lot more sense to try and manipulate a trigger that you've put into place because it will resonate more with you than one that is just something dumb you don't care about. So when you're, attempting to work through your shit, you really have to spend a lot of time getting to know your own mental processes, your own thought processes, and using your body as a tool for confirmation or just to get rid of something. If you have a certain kind of physical response, our body stores memories. Our body stores trauma and memories and all sorts of things. And the body doesn't lie. The monkey mind can make up all sorts of shit, right? It has, and so when you are having something come up like this, if there's a certain kind of physical response, I'm more inclined to believe that than the ones that just leave all this noise running around in your head.
Wow.
I'm trying to think of any situations that I've had like that. I've had very, very, very strange dreams that make absolutely no sense, and they're very similar to what you're describing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he has the weirdest dreams, and he tells me about them when he wakes up in the morning. He tells me, "Hey, I just had this weird dream," and then we'll try to like decode it and pick it apart
Sometimes
and figure
they're
out
so
what it means.
batshit, aren't they?
Yeah.
Sometimes they're
Yeah.
just like so batshit. It's like it's either just complete nonsense. It either has to be complete nonsense, or it has to be such thick layers of meaning that like until you can pull them all out and figure out what they are, it's not going to make any sense, and it's just going to seem like nonsense. And so, like some of the shit I wake up from, I'm just like, what the hell was that? Like you can't even explain it to another person because it's so ridiculous and confusing, but there's a tone to it that is meaningful. And that's why you feel this need to want to try and explore it and explain it and whatever. So I totally get it. You've shared some of your dreams with me, Chris. You do have some interesting ones.
Yes, he does.
Yeah, what's weird though? Okay, so I had one recently about a week before White Crow passed that I was in Reading, that we had moved to Reading, where White Crow lives, and all the animals were acting crazy. Like they were like eating each other's eyeballs and brains and things like that. And I was watching them outside of our house and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? This is insane. And then I go to the barber shop and they completely destroy my hair. Like they cut it like in the front and all this. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And luckily I woke up and I was like grabbing my hair and going, oh,
just to make sure
it's still there.
His long, beautiful locks.
It made no sense whatsoever. But I mean, there was Reading right there. I've never thought about Reading before. A week later, White Crow dies. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Reading is a weird place. Like that's also like the area where like there's a lot of strange energy there and lots of funky stuff goes on there. But it also speaks to the power of the connection between you and White Crow. And I don't know a whole lot about White Crow. I've listened to many of the shows you guys have done with them. I know he has a connection in the past with Andrew Bashago and whatever. But I would look to there being probably even more connection between the two of you guys than you're even like presently aware of. And
maybe I was on Mars and I don't remember it.
Oh, a baby on Mars.
Mars is, I have a different understanding of what
Mars
is than,
bitches.
than
MARS, Mars. Sorry.
I have a totally different understanding of what Mars is and what that would represent than Andrew does, although I believe he's telling the truth about what he thinks happened. And so, I know what some of White Crow's background in history is, and it's highly, I'm sad that I never got to meet him or have a conversation with him, because, especially because I have some similarities with Andrew. Like it would be interesting to explore what happens if I talk to him, but that could go for you guys too. I think part of the reason we have such a strong connection with the people we have a strong connection with is because of our past involvement with each other, whether it be in this life unknown to us or in other lives, past or future. And, you got your guys' energy together, may be so strong that it sends out a vibration that causes chaos. You know what I mean? Like that's some of the kind of things that trainers and programmers were trying to teach. If you've watched hold on my phone. You've watched Stranger Things, and like you've seen the kind of things that like Elle does, right? Those skills that like some of us hold within us, but have to be trained to be brought out.
Cherie has some of those skills. She only eats Eggos. I kid you not. Like we have a freezer full of freaking Eggos.
I am a picky eater. Yes.
Cherie, be picky with something better than Eggos. If you're gonna be picky, pick something better, man. But no,
toaster strudels.
And toaster strudels, yeah.
So get some fancy.
It's a little better.
Get some fancy organic ones, that don't have sugar in them or whatever.
Yeah, the GMO.
But, there you go. But I mean, like it's entire, some of that kind of training is about being able to focus and harness your energy and focus it on a certain object, person, a thing, frequency, whatever, and being able to use that for, you hold those possibilities within you. You can use them for your own benefit or for positive things, but people who are trying to do nefarious stuff manipulate that and try and get you to use it for other stuff, so, I watched the video years back of White Crow marrying you guys. There's obviously a powerful spiritual connection between you that is probably deeper than just what you're, aware of in this, present here and now.
Oh,
Right.
yeah, we
It's
did
deeper
put
than
that out
material.
temporarily.
Yeah, we
I
did.
forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay, I still have the video, but
Yeah.
interesting.
We need to put it back up.
Well, let me ask you this, Emily. So you've helped to unlock a lot of things from my childhood. Or connect the dots rather, because there was a lot of really, really messed up things going on, being pulled out from school, put into a room, in a dark room by a special person that just came there that obviously wasn't part of the school, that was sent in by the psychologist who was a military child behavioral specialist. And
Yeah. Why does the
all
military need child
all
behavior
this
specialists?
insanity that was going on in my childhood that I never connected all the dots. But what can some people look for in their particular childhood?
Well, I mean, just, like, I don't ever recommend that people go looking for problems where none exist. But I also am of the belief that the only reason anybody's listening to people like me or you is because they have questions about themselves and they're interested in knowing the deeper levels and layers and whatnot. So, I mean, some of it is just, having memories that don't quite square away with what everybody else remembers of periods of time in your life and your childhood. Sort of having a set of skills or talents or abilities or likings that are not necessarily not explainable, because we all like things for many reasons, but like just are just a little bit like different or unusual. A level of awareness of like things that are going on just super duper multiple levels. Those are some things. Let's see, certain kinds of unusual physical or emotional responses to certain kinds of music that fall out of the normal. I mean, obviously we all have response to music. That's why it's such a powerful tool, for mind control, but also just for moving people. You know what I mean? But, one of the things that I've come to know, largely from like some, things I've learned from my friend Elisa E. And obviously from people like, Dave McGowan and Mark Devlin and whatever, is that, music is really, really used for programming. And watch your responses to certain kinds of music and certain songs. Like, and they use specific songs to program people, to trigger things, but also to just reinforce ideas. So there's those things. There's just if often, like, it's, if you're a person that doesn't necessarily fit in your family or even in your group of friends, like, of course there are some people that are just odd, but like often that has other reasons behind it. So it's different in every case. You know what I mean? And there's not, at this point, we're in such a weird space because of the technology that's available. And, they've a lot of like mind control has shifted from like direct kinds of MK programming that we think of, like the classics model, to more like, fused with this sort of TI, targeted individual electronic harassment thing. Like that's a form of it as well. And I think what we're talking about in terms of like the simulation triggering non-player characters, or even trying to distort characters that are players and trying to, take them over kind of thing, is like a level of that sort of fused technological aspect of mind control.
Very, very interesting. When you start to get into these topics now, this is where I go, ugh, because they're so important, but they're so embedded in a lot of us. And what do you think about this particular shooter here in the Florida situation? Nobody has talked about him. Nobody's focused. It's been all the focus on the crisis actor. Cherie brought this up in the first hour. All the focus on the crisis actor, no focus on the shooter. What have you found regarding the shooter?
So I've dug in. I don't spend too much time digging into some of this stuff. I kind of like observe what's going on the periphery and use like a combination of research and intuition to sort of divine on a certain level what I think is going on. And I think that he was, definitely like under some kind of influence. I think his background is a little mysterious. He apparently was born to a Jewish family, but he was not living with his, biological family, was living with people who were taking care of him. Police had been called to their house something like 39 times over the last several years. There's this whole thing with like, he was commenting on other people's YouTube videos about wanting to be a professional school shooter. There's also this story.
Was he really?
Around, yeah. So what, I mean, that tells me two things.
Said he was going to be a school shooter.
Really?
A professional school shooter.
Wow.
That could be him or handlers or the simulation trying to create a background.
Create the background.
Create the background, also putting certain kinds of triggers and things in place, right? Like to make it, to build the background. But it also, think about this. What if he really did that jokingly and that put him on the radar of people who run these kinds of things?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, okay, rather than, so somebody when they reported him to, because the guy whose video he commented on did report him to the FBI, but the FBI supposedly didn't do anything. But what if they did? What if just what they did was something different than what they're supposed to do?
Oh, that is a good point. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we will be right back. Much more coming up right here on Beyond the Veil.
My dear traveler, remember this. Whatever planar consciousness may be acting in, both we and the things belonging to the planar, for the time being, are only realities. However, if we mistake the shadows for realities, we find ourselves confusing the upward progress of the ego as an elevation of consciousness.
Let me down a little bit. It's a little too epic. But anyways, we have Emily Moyer on, so the bumper music is equally epic as the guest is tonight, talking about mind control, MK Ultra, and programming. I wonder. See, people look at this David Piggy guy, right? We'll just call him the Piggy guy. How about that? So people look at this guy and they're pointing the finger. He's this, he's that, et cetera, et cetera. He was raised by a freaking FBI agent, like from birth. Mm-hmm. He was programmed systematically to do this. Mm-hmm. So I think it might be a little bit wrong to point the finger and blame at him directly and consider the circumstances and environment that he came from. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's where the truth movement kind of goes wrong sometimes. Emily, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think all of these kids, however much we might not like some of the things they're saying or doing, they are all victims of the same thing Nicholas Cruz is a victim of. They're under mind control.
Yes.
They have been groomed by their parents. Many of them have probably been sexually abused, and they're being used for something that they don't even understand.
Right.
And so we need to have a level of compassion for them. Yelling at him and screaming crisis actor, although we need to be like clear on like what's going on here and talk about it truthfully. This is not the fault. Like, this is something that is being done by adults who are, sick and twisted and cruel and evil and don't, have any kind of humanity in them whatsoever. And they're using the children as pawns because they're not powerful enough to make something happen by themselves. They have to use children because children have a different kind of energy. You know what I mean? Like this. The sick elements of this world, the frequency band that they keep trying to pull us back into is run on the sexual energy of young children. Right. And you guys know that because you made a documentary about it, right?
Yes.
And so these kids, there is nobody who's okay, like ends up doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. Right? Like a person who if this were just a natural organic situation, which I don't believe in any way humans' natural state is to be, unnecessarily violent with people. I mean, sure, there's anomalies and whatever, but like, if this was, let's just say they're just by nature was a crazy person who did something like this, like the kid would be like, and they lost friends and they were scared, they would like be huddled in the corner. They want their mommy. When something happens that's upsetting to me, I revert to that state on a certain level. They're not out there like trying to affect policy changes.
Right.
Most of these kids are not old enough to understand what a policy change actually is. Mm-hmm. And so, and on some certain level, and this is like hard for a lot of people to get their heads around, even the people who are doing this, running this stuff, they're sick and they've had something done to them. And, I'm not suggesting we don't speak honestly about them or that we don't hold them responsible for the things that they're doing, but they need healing as well. They are on this planet with us. Mm-hmm. And if we are ever going to progress and evolve into exactly the beings that we're supposed to be, we have to be mindful of that.
Yes, definitely. It used to be all about the children. Oh, the children. They know that tack isn't working anymore. So you know what they're trying to do? They're trying to lower the age of voting, the voting age to 16.
Of course.
Trying to lower it to 16
it's,
so that
in my opinion, an attack on Trump.
it's an attack on
because
everyone.
they want to try to take him out in 2020. They know they
Mhm.
can't, so they want to try to get some of the kids in. And these kids were just eating Tide Pods a couple weeks ago. And now they're experts on gun control.
They're
you know?
experts.
Totally. I mean,
Yep.
think about it. You can, like, kids before they're developed in any way, like, some of them are looking at a situation where their parents can't afford to send them to college. So if the people who are trying to do this are offering things like, well, you know, we want to make voting for these people and you vote for the Democrats or whatever. I don't care which side. Like, I think it's all a nonsense scam anyway. But the offer of free stuff is much more appealing to people when they're young. Than when they've developed a certain level of wisdom and they understand that nothing is free.
Mhm.
Also, kids are a lot more ideological, and so if something sounds like it's about feelings and nice and that kind of stuff, like they don't have that like practical part of their self to balance that with. You know what I mean? Like it takes when you're younger, and even sometimes as an adult, but it's your tendency to operate from a more emotional, ideological space, and at a certain point, you have to balance that with like logic and like knowledge of like what actually happens in the real world. And I mean, these kids are from Parkland, right? Like
Mhm.
they're not clear on what the real world is like. You know what I mean? Like we thought it was interesting that it's called Parkland, and we think of with Florida, we think of Disneyland, and Disneyland is a park, and you know what
Mhm.
I mean. Like there's all these elements, but yeah, there's nothing to be gained by throwing eggs or tomatoes at the kids that are being used here, because
Right.
they're being used just like the public is being used.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. People fail to take that into consideration sometimes. Oh, go ahead,
Yeah.
Sheree.
Well, I'm looking at these kids, and some I'd like that FBI son, the son
Mhm.
of the FBI agent. The way he's speaking, it's like he's angry at the general public, and you better do something. I'm an American too, and I have a voice, and you better listen to me. And it's almost like the children are talking down to the parents, just
Totally.
like in 1984.
I mean, did you
Just like
see
1984.
some of those clips from the town hall where the kids were
Yeah.
like screaming at Marco Rubio? Now, I have
Mhm.
no love for Marco Rubio or Dana
No, me
Lash
either.
or any of those people, but like the way that it is exactly what you're talking about. It's like the inmates are running the asylum to a certain extent,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, Marco Rubio, he's a politician, he's a liar. Dana Lash, whether you like her or not, a lot of the things she says make sense, and both of them were behaving in polite manners. So like just the fact that not only those children were doing that, but that it was like being encouraged and condoned
Y-
is the cheering on of that 1984
Celebrated. Yeah.
celebrate. Yeah, it's complete. I mean, and she, the shaved head girl was like feeling her. You could see it, like the same way you see when you watch like protests. You know what I mean? Where you see like the fat girl with the blue hair, with the pussy hat on, who's like
Yeah.
screaming down like some white single Christian man, white male who's like screaming him down. And she
Mhm.
just feeling so empowered, and you can feel all of that energy radiating off of her. That,
Mhm.
my friends, is Luch. And that is what the like demonic entities that exist just outside of our, visible spectrum, right? Like, and I don't mean that in the Christian any whatever kind of way, but like the what I mean, right?
Mhm.
They're waiting there right outside of our field of vision. They're snacking on that shit, right?
Uh-huh.
And they're the people. They're the entities and energies that are sort of running. They have like a energetic connection to some of
Cord.
these
Yeah.
busybodies on the ground that are carrying out these plans.
Mhm.
And that kind of emotional release is like food for people who are it's different but similar to the kind of release of emotion and energy that happens when a child is sexually abused.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Ah.
it's different, but it's on a similar kind of level. You know what I mean? It carries an energy signature with it that is just like almost like pheromones for people who are attracted to certain kinds of energy.
Mhm. Well, and it's
Yeah.
just like Dana Loesch, the NRA lady. She
Yeah.
said, "You guys love this. Oh, stop.
True.
You love this. This is good for your ratings. It's good for your business. So you're just going to run with it. No matter how
Well, you know what I found
illogical you
odd
are.
about that town hall is she was telling him, no, I agree with you. I agree with
Uh-huh.
you. Ah! As they were trying to get her to say a certain thing.
Right. They were
And
trying to get her to.
that was, and then she pointed the blame at the police and said, hey, wait a minute. You guys were supposed to be out there 39
You were there
times
39
and you didn't
times,
do
and
anything
you never
about
stopped
it.
him?
And the cop was like, no, it's not our fault. Well, wait a minute. What are we paying you for?
Right.
Well, and now there's starting to be some evidence that there's a police officer on the scene who didn't go into the building.
Right.
He's like
Uh-huh.
stood
Right.
outside and listened to it, which is we've heard this in some of these other situations. And so, yeah, I mean, the whole thing is just it is. I hadn't thought about it, Cherie. That it is so 1984. Like we are living in a complete. I mean, this. I bet I'm. It'll be really interesting to see what this children's march thing looks like.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like they tried it with the Pussy Hat March. They tried it with these like racially infused marches. This might be the one that finally moves the emotions of the American people to sign up completely for their own imprisonment. You know what I mean? Like literally, like you know, and some of these adults that are leading them, it's like Pied Pipers leading the children to off to slaughter, just like what we. And at this point, since the children are now like going to be looked at as the future and the leaders or whatever, the adults are going to follow their children right into the Stone Mountain.
Right.
You know
They're going to follow them right off the cliff.
Listen to the music that's going to kill them or whatever, right? So, yeah, it's. I mean, it's so and what you were saying about like the CNN and the ratings. Like my dad is like obsessed with watching CNN all day, and it will go. I'll be like watching for a minute, and it's like schizophrenic. It'll spend like a minute on the school shooting and a minute on Russian collusion, and that's all they talk about. They just go back and forth between those two things because there's some people who are more like emotionally driven by one story and some for the other, and they want to make sure that they're not ever letting anybody go more than a few minutes without having whatever their button is pushed.
Without getting their hit.
And
whatever it is.
We're completely at this point now. Like I saw this meme the other day, and it is a perfect meme that describes exactly where we're at. So, like on a social level right now, it says everyone I disagree with is a Russian bot. Like other versions of it that said everyone I disagree with is Hitler. Everyone I disagree with is a Russian spy. And that is, and it had like a picture of it was like yellow background. It was like the cover of like one of those Golden Years books, like we used to have when we were little, like the preschool books. And it had like a rainbow on it, and on some it would have a bot sliding down it, on some it would have Putin sliding down, on some it would have Hitler sliding down. And that we're at that really ridiculous, childish level where like no conversation can be had between people who even have a slight disagreement on reality anymore. It's like really scary.
Right, right. No, it's pretty bad. But let me ask you this: what do you think the point of this particular event was, the Florida situation? And let me elaborate a little bit on this. They couldn't pass gun control legislation with Obama. They tried. There were so many state shootings during the Obama administration, and they couldn't pass it. What makes them think that they can possibly pass it with Trump?
I don't think that's actually the goal. I think that like getting people, like I think that's part of the distraction. I don't think they realistically think that they can like ban guns. There's just too many of them. But the fear that is created by people thinking that's I mean, think Alex has been making his livelihood for 20 years off of warning of martial law and gun confiscation tomorrow.
Right.
The amount of fear that generates and brings people, is incredible. Also, I do think I agree with Zachary Hubbard about the idea that like gun sales always go up after when they do this, and a lot of these like same agencies are making money on off of both sides of it, right? And are having things affected by both sides. So I don't know about how much it's really about guns, but I think that's like the glossy cover. I think really this is more just about generating a frequency fear, a fear frequency in people, and getting people to like block out all of the reality that's actually going on around them and focus in on something that is like actually not really part of their life in any way. Distracting people from taking care of their own self and their own family and their own life. I also think it's about, I do think a more realistic thing that could happen is stricter like mental health kinds of laws and evaluations, and classifying certain kinds of personality types as belligerents, right? Or as oppositional or having some kind of mental illness. Like I think that's something that they play with and is not a huge likelihood, but more possible than gun confiscation. And I also think that what what a lot of this really is just saturating everybody with the energy of an occult ritual, like a dark ritual, and getting people to swim in that energy and like internalize that and make that part of their life, just like the racial division and the division between the genders that they're pushing so hard and all of that kind of stuff. Like they want people to really internalize that, and they're trying to break down the bonds between humans. They want people to not trust each other. They want women to not trust men, black and white people to not trust each other, gay people to not trust straight people, all of this kind of stuff. And they want, as many divisions as they can, just like we were talking about being divided in your own self in that last segment, where we were talking about like transgenderism and all that kind of stuff. They want to create as many external divisions and as many internal divisions, as many fragments in a person as possible, because that makes that person more triggerable. It's like a mass, like low dose MK Ultra kind of thing, right? Like it really makes people, I mean, like this means actually absolutely nothing to like my life or my father's life, but me and my father will have like a few seconds of bickering about it, like when I walk by and see what he's watching and whatever. I think, I don't think my dad is really that stupid. I think he does it a lot of times just to agitate me. And he's like one of these people who like, I think likes the idea of pretending that he's been fooled by it when really he probably believes more of the things that I say than he will admit to.
That's how my grandparents are. Yeah.
Yeah. And he it's just
everybody knows somebody like that.
Yeah.
And I also think he's also a little bit perturbed and annoyed that like I figured it out before he did.
Yeah. And you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're, like that's the Jewish part of him that has to be right about everything, right? And you know what I mean? So I think there's that, but I mean, you see people wearing things like my friend Danny talks about this all the time. Like there's people walking around all over the place in big cities wearing shirts that say the future is female, and they're internalizing that idea. And what does that do both to little boys who see that shirt? Then they feel like they have no future, right? Like it's all of these things, all of this stuff is to like, basically it's like to fear, hopelessness, getting people to like, feel like they can't say things about certain things. Like only people who are marginalized deserve to talk. You know what I mean? Only people who have been through something have anything to offer to a situation. And that's just absolutely not true. So it's basically about getting everyone to shut up and listen to the children.
It's a good point. Yeah, and I mean, Hitler and everybody else, they knew that you go after the children. That's who you go after, because that's who changes policy later on. For example, when we were going to school, we didn't have cameras in the hallways. We didn't have cameras on the corners, on the street corners.
We didn't have metal detectors.
We didn't have none of that. And when they started putting them in, it was weird to us.
Columbine, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, it was even before Columbine. I remember back in like 1993, 1994 is when they installed the cameras.
Oh, really?
In the schools. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, this was in the high school that I went to. So it was
it's because they were surveilling you. It was because they were surveilling you, Chris. They were all there for you.
Ah, yes, of course.
We finally
they were
get to
using
the
chronovisor.
They're using the chronovisor.
What we would be doing now, so they were keeping an eye on me then. There you go. But no, they were conditioning people to
be okay with that.
Yeah, to be okay with it. And now is the next wave, which here's what I see happening is that Trump wants to arm the teachers.
Yes,
sounds good on the surface until it's, the teachers aren't capable of having the weapons, so we're going to put militarized police inside of the school. And I mean, they were even talking about this, making the schools more impenetrable.
Yes.
And that means turning them more into a prison.
I mean, to what you said about Hitler and the children, that's been part of all of this, like the communist.
Hitler took the guns. Yeah, Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. God damn it.
Hitler took the EMT.
Yes.
Right? Okay, but here's the thing. So like, whatever, the children are key for, like, it's not working to try and have a revolution by changing adult minds. So you have to do it with the children. Saul Alinsky talks about that. You know what I mean? Obama talked about that kind of stuff, right? Like that's obviously, we understand that. But even the security cameras, they're not there for actual security. They're there to condition people to being surveilled and to scare children, because as we saw with this case, the security cameras were on a 20-minute delay. So what, you know what I mean? Like, now I think that might have been intentional, right? So that anybody who was not in on it or, part of the Fritz or whatever, like wouldn't be able to see or do anything. But this, we know this happens in all of these kinds of situations. Their security cameras are never working when there is actually something that needs to be looked at, but they're always there to make people, nervous, feel afraid, accept the police state. Yeah, the idea of having armed guards or soldiers, or I'm not necessarily opposed to. I was listening to an interview of a teacher who, after Sandy Hook, decided to be armed and whatever. But I don't think it's something that should be standard, or even if it's all talked about, then I don't know how I feel about that stuff. But yeah, we should be able to have some place that we go where things are just normal, right? Like where, like normal playing outside, not bars on windows, not guns, not, military. When I travel to other countries, it's freaky. Like you see, there's like military people out, like standing outside the hotels, you know what I mean? Like guarding hotels. It's like, okay, like, it's like, I'm having a nice time inside, but am I just like on a little prison? And then also the, people are stupid with this whole thing with Trump and the wall. Folks, the wall is not to keep people out. It's to keep us in.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Don't encourage or condone that, or any, whatever your feelings are on whether you are, an anarchist and believe in open borders, or whether you're somewhat of a nationalist or constitutionalist and believe in having a defined nation state. Like if there's a wall there, they're selling it to you as to keep others out, but the real purpose is to keep you in and participate in the construction of your own prison cell.
Right. Right. It's digging your own grave. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
I've realized that the New World Order agenda isn't open borders the way that we've been told that it is. It's actually closed borders and very, very small factions getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And all of these people that are like, close the borders, build the walls.
Mm-hmm.
They're pushing the New World Order agenda, believing that they're against it.
Right. They believe that they're doing what's best for their family, and they believe they're doing what's best for themselves, when really it's the opposite. It's a briar patch situation.
All you
really
need is a horse and a rifle and a posse, though.
They play both sides of it, because while part of their push is to create like homogenization and like, this sort of like everybody's the same and not, you know what I mean? Like, and not is collectivism as opposed to individualism, but so they push that side of it, which is true on a certain level. But then there's also this thing where really they want everybody on lockdown, either physically is great if they can do it, but you don't even need physical lockdown if you have everybody on like emotional and mental lockdown already.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason that they pulled our channels in a lot of ways is or pulled our videos is to get us to censor ourselves so that they don't have to.
Right.
Because you know what I mean? So, that's, you're totally right. What you were saying this morning, we like need to learn how to play the game sort of smarter kind of thing. But also like on another level, like, sometimes we have to make the choice that we're just not going to let them, we're going to say what we want to say, and that's their little game they want to play. That's their little game.
True. True.
It's so, one of the things that we really have to start doing is defining. Our friend Dawn, who participates in all of our stuff that we do on Off Planet Radio, like always talks about this, is you have to define your own game. You know what I mean? Like, because if we're in a simulation and this is all game and everything's being run on game theory and whatever, then we need to be the center of our own game and create the rules for the game we're playing, and be in charge of it. So it's really important. I think that like that's like the main thing with like the threat of censorship gets people to censor themselves. The threat of gun control gets people to disarm voluntarily. The threat of scary immigrants gets people to agree to build their own prison cell. Yep. And so we have to stop being so reactive. Like it's so, you know what I mean? Like it's if it weren't so sick, it's masterful, the shit they do,
Very
really,
true.
And we have to start, like not, I don't want to say like employing their techniques, because I think some of their techniques come from like, something icky and dark, but like, start sort of, they're not afraid to be the master of their own game, and we have to be the same. You have to be like, look, this is my game. These are the rules to my game. This is it. This is what I do. Period. You know what I mean? And we're, moral people. And, they're playing. They're immoral, and they don't care, and they've defined their game. You know what I mean? But you don't have to be like immoral and icky to sort of be as powerful. You don't have